Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Reimagined with Robin. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. Reimagined with Robin is a 15-minute live conversation with a leader who is working to reinvent how we interact the world that we live in, whether it's renting physical spaces like swimming pools to running cafes and more. I'm thrilled to do a multi-part series during AAPI Heritage Month to pay tribute to the generations of Asian and Pacific Islanders who have enriched America's history and are instrumental to its future success. Tuning into our audience today, I want to ask you, please type in the comment box below, what is the best advice you have ever received? And today we have our special guest to close out as our finale for AAPI Heritage Month, Tung, Managing Partner at GGV Capital. And welcome, Hans.
Thank you, Robin, for having me.
You may know of Hans through many different channels. His reputation obviously precedes him, from his global consumer internet investments to leading GGV these past 8+ years, to being on the Forbes Midas list as one of the top VCs in the world the last decade, or even his podcast, Evolving for the Next Billion. And lastly, his fundraising efforts and social campaign for the AAPI community groups last year. I've been really lucky to work with Hans for many years now, and so I'm really excited to lead this interview today. Hans, this is going to be a lot of questions for you, but maybe we can get started by just asking you about your background and what led you to where you are today.
Sure. I love to answer that. But before I start, first of all, I want to congratulate you. This vlog that you have started has done amazingly well. I remember 4 years ago when Zara talked me into doing the first podcast at GGV. I mean, I was wondering who would listen to anything we had to say. And then 4 years later, we'll have several more podcasts and vlogs now, and you have your own, and you have blossomed. So it's just amazing to see how positive first steps lead to other interesting impacts and effects that beyond our wildest imagination when we first started several years ago. And that's almost the kind of spirit I want people to take away from this session, is that don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to share. Don't be afraid to evangelize. You're going to get a lot more people. Whatever you have, anyone who listening to this have to say, I'm sure you'll have interesting resonance with others around you, and get more people to be action oriented. So this is just great. And to your question, as you know, I was born in Taiwan. I came to the States when I was 13 years old, starting in Los Angeles, in LA. When I was in Taiwan for the first 13 years of my life, I became sort of fascinated with history, whether it was Taiwan's history, East Asian history, Chinese history, European history, American history, anything I can get my hands on, reading about cultures and historical developments of different regions. Just absolutely fascinated me. And I always felt that what can I do as beneficiary of so many interesting lessons from great actors in the past that made things happen, and what can I give back over time and leave an imprint on the world I live in. So when I first came to California, to LA, it was a cultural shock for me. I never heard of the concept of Asia before. It was always Japanese, Korean, Taiwanese, Cantonese, Indian, Singaporean, Indonesian. Everybody's from their own country. Yet in the U.S., the concept of Asian American Asia as a community, it was something that I learned to embrace. The 6 years that I lived in LA before I came to Stanford. And so the experience as an Asian American growing up in LA and then come to Stanford, that helped me to realize that there's a lot of things that I can do to sort of bridge the culture gaps and misunderstanding amongst different groups, not just between Americans and Asians, but even within Asian American community itself. So that kind of helped to shape kind of a VC I am today, someone who is more global, trying to bridge the gap and bring more different people together.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's true. There's so many times, right? Like Asia is just like lumped into one group, but our like community is actually really diverse.
Correct.
And so I guess, what maybe you can share some like challenges and also opportunities that, AAPI execs or even founders you see today. I know I've learned a lot from you, and sometimes it's really hard to take that advice. But I have it in Post-it notes like everywhere to remind me all the time, so I don't forget.
I think when the tragedy happened in Atlanta a year ago, where 8 people died and 6 of them were Asian women. It's just, and I thank our colleague Glenn Solomon for suggesting that we should do something. And when I reach out and we discuss and posted on Twitter and LinkedIn that we want to rally the community to donate to the community groups that are battling these Asian hate incidents that's happening all around us. We didn't know if we were willing to donate $100,000 to match people who were willing to donate from the community, that a lot of people, anybody would respond. And I was extremely shocked and surprised that most of the VC firms in San Javier did respond. Of course, a lot of thanks to Eric at Zoom, and then Jeremy at Lightspeed, Eric and Chihua at Goodwater for stepping up to co-lead up with us. But it just goes to show you that if you don't speak up, others don't know you need help. If you don't speak up, others don't know what's the significance of your costs. And the fact that if we as a community are willing to be more vocal, share our lessons, experiences, both positive and negative, it helps to catalyze more things to happen. And then later on, Joe Tsai and Jerry Yan and others step forward and start the Asian American Foundation that can help to take this even to the next level, and make more impact. I can't wait to see a more active Asian American community, what we can do. I remember when I first came to this country in 1983, a year before that, Vincent Chen was murdered in Detroit because he was mistaken for being a Japanese auto worker, and he's a Chinese American. And even within our own community, I'm now seeing things happening on TikTok or YouTube, people saying, "No, I'm not Chinese, I'm this and that." And it just seeing all of us not to sort of divide amongst ourselves, but stick together, help each other as we become more vocal, more active in America as one larger Asian American community is extremely important. And it's not just towards East Asians, but for Southeast Asian, for Indians, for Pakistanis, and there's for Pacific Islanders. The more and more that we're inclusive, the stronger we are, and the more vocal we are, the more people understand why we feel the way we do.
It kind of goes back to what you were saying before, like just taking the first step can help others do the same too. So like in the social campaign, when you decided to do that first for GGV, others were like, oh, wow, I can do that too, and chimed in. And I feel like, like you said about the podcast, to the blog, to that, having somebody go out and just like set the example, I think sometimes is all it takes for others to follow.
Yeah.
So like,
and surprisingly, the allies we end up getting, internally, without Glenn and Jeff and Christine and Jesse and the other support, we wouldn't be able to help to catalyze this raise of 5 million. And when I see people want to donate to TAF, it's the same thing. And so seeing people of all different kinds, backgrounds, being willing to stick up for one another, stand up for any restriction against immigration, for example, these are things that matter to our community. And the more we care about each other, the stronger we become. And the same thing goes back to as one starts our own career as well. You've done a good job at getting different AAPI leaders to share advice to people who are starting out in their career at this particular moment in time. And as good Asian American, we were taught to do certain things and we want to get A's on our tests and go to the best schools and try to get the best jobs. And as you're stepping back, there is no one path to success, and there's no one path that fits it all. So not having any preconceived notion of what's good, but try to figure out what makes sense for you, what's the right fit for you, is so important. And not to be always stereotype or typecast into doing certain things, and have the courage to figure out what makes sense for yourself. That's the most important thing that I hope people can learn from listening to all of the vlogs you have done, interviews you've done over the past month.
One of the most difficult piece of advice, and I think this actually applies for a lot of Asians in particular, is don't let perfectionism hinder your ability to make decisions. And I feel honestly, it's really funny because I always get stuck in this route of oh, I can't send this out, it's not perfect, or I can't, and then I just get into this habit of just not doing it at all because it's still not in this final perfected state, right? And actually, I was just talking to you about this because when we were, working as a cross-border team too, I was oh, I'm waiting for my colleague to send this out, but she doesn't want to send it because it's not perfect. And then I myself have this own problem. So as a leader, how, did you ever have this perfectionism issue, or was it something that you just overcame?
Well, I think I'm probably not as smart as many of you, so I don't suffer from that because I'm never perfect. And also, I learned as a founder twice after doing 3 years in banking that you got to develop a thick skin as a founder because you don't have much as a startup. So you have to scrape for everything, and then everything you send out initially, it will never be far from perfect, and users will give you a lot of feedback, mostly negative early on. You just have to learn to iterate very fast and improve and win their good grace because you improve so much so quickly. And so as a founder, I learned that those you cannot be perfect, and don't let that be the enemy of good. So getting stuff out, getting feedback from the community, iterate with them, include them in the process so they feel they're part of your success, extremely important. And those are things that if I wasn't a founder, I would never learn those lessons. I'm glad I did that, and it helped to shape my career as well.
How do you support founders today, whether they are AAPI founders or not? A lot of times people just think of VCs as, oh, you make the investment and that's it. But I see so much more behind the scenes of what you do, whether you talk to founders one-on-one over the phone all the time. How do you do it, and what kind of advice do you usually give to them?
Since I was a founder before, I know how lonely that can be. You late at night, things are not going well. There are things that you worry about that literally keep you up at night. And tomorrow you have to, brave yourself to face another 100 people in your office, to guide them with inspirational speeches. It's just not easy. And so through being a founder of 2 startups over a 3-4 year period, I came to appreciate sort of pace. You can't fix everything in one go. How do you pace it and then sequence it one after the other, and have the patience to wait for certain things to get learned, so that other founders can figure out what makes sense for them. Because one of the things that a lot of ex-operator turned VC will realize is that you can't fix issues for your founder. Everyone has to learn at their own pace. And so spending time encouraging others to try different things to find out what makes sense for them. We can give advice, but ultimately it's the founder who can make the ultimate decision. So sometimes it's kind of painful, and we worry for them, but they got to learn. And the ones that do, it ends up doing something far more amazing that you even thought is possible for you yourself to do it. And that's the amazing part. And watching, for example, Airbnb, watching Brian Chesky and the team navigate through COVID in spring 2020, when a lot of people thought, oh my God, the travel business is dead and it will be screwed. And they figured out a way to make staycation work on Airbnb platform and showed that it has the most flexible supply chain in the world. And so that's just something that unless you are patient and you're willing to stand by them when things are tough, that they will not have they need the opportunity to show you what amazing can be.
I feel like that is something that, a lot of times you lead by example at GGV itself. Like even for us as it feels like obviously we're not a startup, but like, even within GGV, there's like a lot of initiatives and priorities that you also have to like balance and manage as well.
Right. I mean, all of you do a great job over the years to get even more efficient at what you guys do and prioritize even more. And seeing how our investment team, platform team, and data team and finance team learn to work together and work, extremely a lot more smoothly and in sync with each other versus say 5-6 years ago. And that's probably something I'm extremely proud of. When I joined GGV, as you know, we probably had a bit over $1 billion under management. Now it's just under 10 billion in the last 10 years. So the second decade ends up being like 5-6x the first decade, and that was a collective team effort by the MDs as well as all the teams I just mentioned. And so seeing that happen, it just made me so proud as a member of the GGV team to see that collectively we can recruit, retain, and develop talent, and so that collectively we can do so much more than we thought was possible 10 years ago. And so I know this is a tough time with what's happening in the macro, what's happening in the geopolitical arena, but as one of the most global team that we have, I'm still excited and can't wait to see what the next 10 years for GG will become, thanks to your leadership and others who have now risen to the position of influence to be able to make impact.
Thanks. I think to close out the session, I have one last question for you. It's what is some advice that you would want to give to the next generation leaders, and also like maybe even 10 years from now or 15 years, where do you envision like GGV to be, or like the world to be for us all?
Yeah, great question. I'm glad you asked us to give career advice last week. I think the one thing that has served me well over the years is the ability to make decisions, even when there's imperfect information available. A lot of times we try to postpone and wait until we have more information before we act on something. But in reality, I always believe that if you start making decisions and see the impact and then make adjustments, you're in the driver's seat. You can dictate the tempo, you can control the flow, you can control the pace much better, and kind of getting others have to react to you instead. So I feel that ability to always frame what you're facing in your trade-offs. What's the trade-off I need to make? On both sides, either decision will have imperfections. I know that. Neither will be optimal, but one is still better than the other. So if I make this move, it will give me a chance to make better moves down the road, so that if I think ahead of where I want to be, where I want our firm to be, the sooner and earlier I make those decisions and make adjustments, the faster I will get there. I don't think we're smarter than anyone else, but the more adjustments we get to make, we have better chance of succeeding. So that's a philosophy that I've always believed in, and that served me well when I decided to move from California to China to work, and then decided to leave China after 8 years, to come back to the Bay Area, and been here the last 9 years. And so all these major moves, I know each one had its risk, but once I can frame it into a decision, a trade-off decision, and therefore it somehow release a lot of stress, remove a lot of burden, or the weight of the decision doesn't seem as big, because I know that I have the ability to make adjustments later. So I'm more willing to commit to something and iterate from there. And that has served me extremely well. And I hope that for everyone else who is in their career, whether it's just at the beginning of the career or midpoint of career, always not worry about what has happened before. Everything you have learned up to this point is going to be useful to you. All the places I've worked, the 8, 9 cities, 10 cities I've worked and lived in, At the time when I was moving from city to city, it seems like I was making a lot of lateral moves. But the learning from the first decade really helped me in the second decade when the world was becoming a lot more global. And I expect that approach will still do well over the next 10 years as well.
Seems to be really important to always like self-reflect and like own those decisions that you make and not like freak out about buyer's remorse.
Yes.
After you make the decision, because you already made it. So keep moving.
And that's why I love watching sports. You watch the great basketball teams or football teams, the superstars that do well, that excel as champions, continually to be able to do that. They don't let the weight of the previous game, whether it's loss or bad play, affect them. They just move on to the next. That's why the teams like the Warriors, like the Patriots, have done so well consistently. And so it's so fun to be able to learn life lessons from other professions and other industries and apply that to what we do.
Yeah, I think it's so amazing how you could always, talk about examples and advice through like different lens, whether it's through like wartime stories or like championship games or sports, right? It's very applicable to even like work and everything that we do.
Yeah,
So.
the world's a lot more interconnected than we realize. It's just how you approach it, how you choose to evaluate and look at it. So that's what makes life so interesting.
Well, I know that we're at time and we have a lot of questions that we can't ask. So maybe next time we can have a part 2.
Sounds good. Anytime.
My colleagues and I at GGV are like so thankful to be under your leadership, Hans. Thank you for sharing and taking the time out today. For everybody out there, stay tuned for future videos. Thank you.
Thank you.